thank you very much for talking to TRT World. This year at the World Economic Forum in Davos, the Turkish foreign minister said that Georgia should be given NATO membership, and the reason it's not happening is because NATO is concerned about provoking Russia. Do you agree with that statement?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to your television and to speak about our relations with Turkey, which is our strategic partner and our close neighbor. And regarding your question about my very close friend and colleague's assessment about Georgia's NATO integration, I fully agree with you and fully share his position that Georgia should be invited as a member, or Georgia should be granted the membership action plan. This is a well-recognized fact among all NATO allies that Georgia is one of the most advanced aspirant country, which is fully implementing all the tasks for the eventual membership. It is the Bucharest Summit decision back in 2008, where was a decision that Georgia will become a NATO member. Since then, we are demonstrating significant progress on our way towards membership. Georgia has all practical tools for the membership: the annual national program, NATO Georgia Council, the substantial NATO Georgia package, and also the very high-level meetings which Georgia took part during the last years. In addition, Georgia's place as one of the significant contributors to the Resolute Support Mission is very highly valued by our NATO partners. Georgia is the biggest per capita contributor to the Resolute Support Mission in Afghanistan. We are fighting shoulder to shoulder with our allies of NATO. Although we have suffered casualties, 32 Georgians died during this operation. For a small country like Georgia, it's quite a significant loss. But we understand that we have to contribute to the global fight against terrorism. And we're going to continue to contribute in this common fight against this threat. And we realized that despite the fact that for the time being there is no consensus within NATO about Georgia's membership, we have to demonstrate patience, and we are not discouraged by this fact. On the contrary, with the support of our friends and allies, with the support of Turkey, statements like my colleague Mevlut Çavuşoğlu made in Davos about encouraging other NATO allies for accepting Georgia to NATO or granting Georgia membership action plan, this is really very helpful.
But what do you think about the second part of the foreign minister's statement, that the only reason really that Georgia hasn't become a member of NATO is because NATO is worried about provoking Russia in some way?
Of course, we are facing very serious security challenges coming from Russia, and it's obvious that more than 20% of our territories are under occupation as a result of war back in 2008, when Russia occupied Georgian territories of Abkhazia and Tkhinvali region, South Ossetia. And on a daily basis, we are facing a lot of security challenges coming from our northern neighbor. The continued process of illegal borderization is going on, installation of barbed wire fences across the occupation line. On a daily basis, we are facing serious facts of violation of fundamental principles of international law. But Georgia is demonstrating serious responsibility by not reciprocating and not replying to these illegal and provocative activities, by demonstrating consistent peaceful policy towards settlement of conflict by peaceful means. First of all, we are committed to the already taken commitments. We are implementing ceasefire agreements signed between Georgia and the Russian Federation in 2008. We made legally binding pledge not to use force for restoring our territorial integrity. We are asking Russia Federation to reciprocate. We are constructively participating in all international frameworks dealing with the conflict settlement, including Geneva International Dialogue, where together with Russian Federation, we are talking in the presence of international community, with the presence of OSCE, United Nations, with the presence of United States and European Union about the peaceful settlement of conflict. In addition, we are putting forward very positive new peace initiatives, how to build bridges between war-torn communities and between people living on the different sides of occupation line. Georgia is moving toward the European Union, and we are getting all the benefits from the process of integrating into the European Union. So we want to share all these benefits from the process of the EU integration to people living on the other side, based on free trade agreement with the European Union, based on getting good education in good Georgian and Western universities of people, young generation living on the other side of occupation line, and also to use the opportunity of freedom of movement, which Georgia has in the format of the visa-free movement in the Schengen zone countries. So this is the opportunity for people as well. So by demonstrating peaceful solution and being consistent towards the peaceful settlement of conflict, we are trying to help others, international community, to help us toward the process of integration. So we are sending right signals to international community that Georgia is committed to already taken international norms and principles. So this is our policy, and this is how we see this process of NATO and EU integration process should go in parallel with the restoration of territorial integrity.
But how can the issue about these two territories be resolved if, from your point of view, you have Russia, who is not abiding by international agreements, ceasefire agreements? How can this situation be sorted out?
So first of all, we have here hope for our European and international partners. And Turkey, first of all, which is our strongest supporter of Georgia's sovereignty and territorial integrity. In all international forums, in all international organizations, we have very vocal and explicit support from our international partners. And on numerous occasions, Turkey supported Georgia's territorial integrity and sovereignty. So we are trying to consolidate support, first of all, to support of international partners in all international formats, like UN Security Council, UN General Assembly, OSCE ministerial meetings, Council of Europe, both formats in the Parliamentary Assembly or Deputy Committee Ministers frameworks. So we are using all existing platforms and frameworks for increasing consolidation. So we want to demonstrate that the whole international community is supporting the rules-based international order. And it has to be example for others, and also to be very strong signal to Russian Federation that Georgia, which is committed to international norms and principles, and on the other side there are two parties of this conflict, which happened back in 2008. It is a very bad legacy which we have inherited from the past, but Georgia continuously sending constructive signals to Russian Federation, to our international partners, that we are committed to the peaceful settlement of conflict. And our constructive approach in Geneva talks, first of all, is a clear evidence of this.
Can you give me an idea of the sort of perception of Russia from inside Georgia? Because it seems it's a very controversial issue, if you like. Do you sort of look at perhaps Ukraine and you think of Crimea and something like that maybe would happen to us? And I also understand when there were protests in Georgia, which started last year, it all kind of stemmed from the fact that a Russian politician came and gave a speech from the Speaker's chair in Parliament. And it seems very, as I say, very controversial, very easy to conjure up these kind of feelings in Georgia. So how is Russia perceived there?
So it's the relations with the Russian Federation is a very sensitive issue in Georgia, in Georgian politics. First of all, because of fact of Russian occupation of Georgian territories. As I have mentioned, more than 20% of territories are still under occupation, and unfortunately, the process of factual annexation and crippled occupation is still going on. And this causes a very negative attitude towards this policy of Russian Federation towards Georgia. Starting from 2012, when the new Georgian government came into power, we have completely changed the policy toward the Russian Federation. We significantly downgraded the war rhetoric, which was the case during the previous government. We have established new formats of addressing all problematic issues vis-à-vis Russian Federation. But in 2012, the new Georgian government also established a separate channel of communication with the Russian Federation. We call it informal channel of dialogue. And the Prime Minister appointed his special representative to deal with the Russian Federation on the issues which are not related to the most problematic issues, the most burning issues which we are discussing in Geneva format. So, the main idea of establishing this format was to address on the issues where we can find consensus with the Russian Federation. For example, on restoring trade, restoring people-to-people contacts, restoring direct flights, which was stopped and suspended after the war with the Russian Federation. And the idea was to move forward in order to reach consensus on these issues, in order to have some positive impact on the most problematic issues in our relations with the Russian Federation. Unfortunately, it has no positive impact on the burning issues we are discussing in Geneva. But there is slight progress. For example, on trade, we have restored trade with the Russian Federation, and now the trade volume is increasing because it's an important market for Georgian products. At the people-to-people level, we have excellent cooperation. Russia is one of the biggest country from visitors in Georgia. Last year we have accomplished around we have hosted around 9 million visitors. For a small country like Georgia, it's quite a significant figure. Out of 9 million, more than 1 million were visitors and tourists from the Russian Federation. We are not creating artificial barriers for Russians, for Russian companies to come and invest in Georgia. We are not establishing visa restrictions for Russian citizens to visit Georgia, while Georgians need to take visa in order to enter the Russian Federation.
Last year, Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, said that if NATO was to give Georgia membership, but only on the terms of the area that it currently controls, then we won't go to war over it, but it would affect our relations with NATO. Now that suggests to me that if it was given membership for the whole of the Georgian territory, in your view, then they would go to war over it. Is that something you are really concerned about?
First of all, NATO-Georgia's relations is the issue of between Georgia and the NATO. And back in 2008, when in Bucharest the decision was adopted on the Georgia's membership, it clearly indicates that NATO recognizes Georgia within its territorial integrity, within its internationally recognized borders. And this is the very clear decision of 2008 Bucharest summit of NATO. Later on, when Georgia was recognized as an aspirant country, once again there was a reiteration that Georgia as an aspirant was recognized within its internationally recognized borders. And this is a clear policy of NATO. And of course, when this momentum comes, when there will be a political consensus within our NATO allies, of course, Georgia will accept it in NATO within its internationally recognized borders.
As you mentioned before, Georgia has contributed in quite a large way to NATO operations already, even though you're not yet a member and you don't have a roadmap to membership.
Yeah.
I think you've contributed thousands of soldiers to various operations. You've helped participated in joint exercises, this kind of thing. And also you've suffered casualties. Because this situation is dragging on, if you like, it's taking a long time to achieve membership, do you feel used in a way or taken advantage of, that you're putting all this effort in to the procedure but not getting the membership back?
No, as I have mentioned, the integration of Georgia to NATO and the European Union is the top foreign policy priority for Georgia, which is already reflected in the main document of Georgia, which is Constitution. This is also reflected in the numerous decisions of the parliament, and also it is reflected in the main program of the government, which is based on 5 principles, and one of the main 2 principles are countries' full integration into European and Euro-Atlantic structures. So, as a government which is respecting its constitution, its decision of the parliament, we are following this path, and we are doing everything possible to move closer towards the membership. So this is the very clear policy, and in addition, I would like to highlight that despite the fact that decision is not yet being made about Georgia's membership or granting Georgia membership action plan, the huge number of Georgian population still supports NATO integration process. According to recent polls, around 74% of the total population of Georgia is supporting Georgian NATO integration.
Now, your Prime Minister said at Davos also a few days ago that the only way for Georgia to survive in the international arena was with support from the United States and the European Union. Can you describe how that could be, how that can counter any activities that Russia may be carrying out?
Yes, first of all, it's true that for a small country like Georgia, it's always difficult, to deal with the challenges, first of all, security and economic challenges we are facing on a daily basis without support of our strategic partners. And of course, as Prime Minister rightly mentioned, the United States, which is our main strategic partner, and the European Union, both with them we are developing excellent cooperation. Currently, the relations with the United States is all-time high. We have association agreement with the European Union, together with deep and comprehensive free trade agreement, which is important for diversifying our markets. Since signing the DCFTA, we now have chance to enter 500 million European market. So we have association agreement, but we want to go beyond. We have very ambitious goals to go beyond and to approach the eventual goal, which is the membership. We are developing also our unilateral task and working unilaterally to approach this goal. Recently, we have tabled for the consideration the roadmap to Europe, which is our unilateral task, and which envisaged more active participation of Georgia into EU programs and agencies.
Do you have a time frame in mind of when you would like to achieve EU membership?
Of course, we want today, but we are not so naive to think that it will happen immediately. But at the same time, we are looking realistically what is happening within Europe. Europe is facing its own internal challenges, coming from migration, coming from different budgetary issues, the recent development on Brexit, and also some skepticism which from time to time we hear from different EU capitals on another wave of enlargement. So we hope that this open door policy towards the Western Balkans will be also keep open for Western Balkan countries the possibility to be accepted in the next wave of enlargement process. But as I have mentioned, there is some skepticism towards enlargement due to some internal challenges the EU is facing. but we hope that time will come.
It seems to me from the outside that Turkey and Georgia have very good relations. They share a border. Turks don't need a passport to enter Georgia. There's a lot of trade going on between the two sides. Now, if both countries were inside NATO, what do you think that would add to the organisation and the world generally, the international community?
Of course, it will add additional strengths, strengths in the region, because Turkey is an important contributor to the security of the region, in the Black Sea region. And if another Black Sea country, Georgia, will be accepted to NATO, it will be also beneficial for NATO as well in order to see that both Turkey and Georgia strengthening the NATO security in the region. We have very close relations with our neighbor, Turkey. We have strategic partnership, and which is also translated into concrete practical dimension. A couple of years ago, the special format was established of Turkey-Georgia Strategic Partnership Council, which was already established, and we had already first meeting of the Strategic Partnership Council meeting between Georgia and Turkey. I'm very optimistic about our future deep cooperation.
At the moment, Georgia is a member of the Council of Europe, the international organisation which promotes rule of law, democracy, and you're also now at the head of the committee which basically makes the major decisions for this organisation. So what are your priorities going to be while you hold this position?
So it's first of all, I would like to mention that it's an enormous challenge for us and enormous responsibility to chair this important international organization during upcoming 6 months. We have already started very active process of presidency since November of last year, when we took over the chairmanship from previous presidency of France. And in November, I have already presented 4 priorities for Georgian presidency. Then one of them is the priority of we call this environment and correlation of environmental protection issues with the human rights protection. This is the new dimension for this organization because it's a well-known fact that European Convention of Human Rights does not consider the environmental issues, and there is only case law, and that's why it's a completely new dimension for this organization. And by encouraging discussions within this organization on this direction, I believe that will give new impetus to this organization. And another priority is the encouragement of civil participation in decision-making process, which is also common issue and challenge for all members of the Council of Europe in the European continent. And we believe that the very active participation in civil society in the decision-making process will help this organization in future significantly to strengthen its role as an organization which is advocating human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. The third one is related to the children-friendly justice system, which is a serious problem on the European continent. And here we have very good practice and experience. The Georgian local legislation, which was already adopted, can be shared, and our experience we want to bring to the attention of the members of the Council of Europe, and it will be a good opportunity for us to share this experience with others. And the fourth dimension is the encouragement of democracy through participation, use, and culture. And bringing the use dimension in the encouragement of democracy processes within the area of the Council of Europe, I believe also will be very useful for strengthening this organization. So these are 4 priorities, but of course we also will deal as a chair of the president of the Council of Europe Deputy Committee Meetings on a daily basis issues which are on a daily agenda of this organization, including the situation with regard of unresolved conflicts in Ukraine, in Georgia, and other parts of the Council of Europe, and on a daily basis address all these challenges this organization is facing.
Foreign Minister, thank you very much. Thank you.